The evening she asked for a divorce looked almost ordinary. The kitchen light was warm, the same soft yellow glow that had filled that room for years. I was rinsing a coffee mug when she said my name. Not loudly, not angrily, just carefully. When I turned around, she was sitting at the table with both hands wrapped around a glass of water she hadn't touched. Her shoulders were stiff, like someone holding themselves upright through willpower alone. "I think we should get a divorce." There was no build-up, no argument beforehand, no dramatic tone, just a sentence that sounded practiced. For a moment I studied her face, not with shock, more with quiet curiosity. She didn't meet my eyes. That told me more than the words. I dried my hands with a towel and sat down across from her. "How long have you been thinking about it?" I asked. She looked surprised by the question. "A while." I nodded slowly. That answer didn't hurt the way I expected it to. Maybe because the distance between us hadn't appeared overnight. It had been growing in small ways: missed conversations, polite silence at dinner, the sense that we had both been walking beside each other rather than with each other. "Okay," I said. "Just that." She blinked. "You're okay with it?" "No," I said calmly. "But I understand." The room went quiet. I think she had prepared for anger, maybe even pleading. Something emotional that would justify her decision. Instead she got acceptance. Not surrender, just stillness. We talked for another 20 minutes. Mostly logistics. If we separated, who would stay in the apartment for a while, how we'd divide things, what steps would come next. It felt strange, discussing the end of a marriage like we were planning a small move. When she left the kitchen that night, she looked almost unsettled, as if the calm had disrupted something she expected to happen. 2. The days after that conversation were quieter than I imagined. Not empty, just reflective. I went to work the next morning like usual. Sat at my desk, answered emails, had meetings. But in between those moments, something inside me kept shifting. Memories surfaced. Not dramatic ones, small things. Times I had stayed silent when I should have spoken. Moments where I had adjusted myself to keep peace. Patterns that seemed harmless when they happened, but clearer now in hindsight. I didn't feel anger toward her. Mostly I felt a slow awareness of how much of myself I had slowly set aside over the years. Divorce hadn't created that realization, it had simply uncovered it. That week I started making practical changes. I contacted a lawyer, nothing aggressive, just information. I reorganized my finances. I also did something else that surprised even me. I signed the lease on a small apartment across town. Not immediately. The move would happen in a few weeks. But it was mine. A place I chose without negotiation or compromise. When I told her about it, she was standing in the hallway after work. "You already signed something?" she asked. "Yes." Her expression tightened slightly. "That was fast." "I've had time to think too," I said. The truth was simple. I didn't want to spend months floating in uncertainty. If our marriage was ending, then life had to move forward in a real way. The apartment wasn't revenge. It was clarity. 3 days later she asked if we could talk again. This time it was her idea. We sat in the living room instead of the kitchen. The evening light was coming through the window in long stripes across the floor. She looked different, less certain. "I might have rushed things," she said quietly. I didn't interrupt. She kept going. "When I asked for the divorce, I thought you would fight for us." There was no accusation in her voice. Just confusion. "And when you didn't," she hesitated. "It felt like you were already gone." I leaned back slightly in my chair. "I wasn't gone," I said. "I just wasn't going to beg someone to stay." The words came out softer than they sounded. She looked down at her hands. "I didn't expect that, I know." For a while neither of us spoke. Then, she said the sentence I think had been building in her mind since the moment I stayed calm in that kitchen. "What if we tried again?" It wasn't dramatic, no tears, no grand speech, just uncertainty. I studied her face, not to judge her, to understand what had really changed. Sometimes people reconsider things, because they've rediscovered love. Sometimes they reconsider, because the outcome didn't look the way they imagined. And sometimes even they don't know the difference. You might be serious, I said slowly. But I've already started changing my life. Her eyes flicked up. The apartment? Yes. That doesn't mean we can't, it means something, I said gently. Not as an argument, just a fact. For years I had shaped my decisions around preserving our relationship. Now I had made one that belonged entirely to me. That shift mattered more than either of us fully understood yet. She looked at the floor again. So what happens now? I considered the question carefully. I still care about you, I said. That didn't disappear. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, but something else happened this week. I continued. What? I realized I don't want to build a life where someone has to threaten leaving before we both start paying attention. The sentence hung quietly between us. It wasn't cruel, just honest. She nodded slowly. I understand. And I think she really did. We sat there a little longer, not as enemies or strangers. Just two people who had reached a point neither of us expected. Eventually she stood up. When she walked to the door, she paused. I didn't think you would change this much in a few days. I thought about that. I didn't either, I said. After she left, the apartment felt different. Not empty, just quieter in a new way. The divorce might still happen, or maybe time would bring another conversation neither of us could predict yet. But something inside me had already settled. For the first time in years, the direction of my life wasn't being negotiated in silence. It was simply moving forward.